Well, I start, for this whole presentation. Is the first thing that I like to do is that I would like to mention that what I'm going to talk about today applies to American, Australian, Japanese somehow, and European universities, Western universities, to give like a shorthand. I'm not trying to say today that what you do here in Nigeria is not as good or worse or anything like that. There's no judgment here at all. What you're going to hear is exactly just the way people are doing things at the moment in those countries. As you will realize, things can be a bit different, but once again, if I say it's different from Nigeria, it doesn't mean I think that what's happening in Nigeria is bad. No, it's not what I mean at all. It means it's just different, full stop, okay? Second thing, I might generalize a few things about Western countries in general. Some of them, I will repeat that later, tend to have quite different rules, between each other. What you know here in Nigeria, you tend to know the American or the British system a bit more than the others. But most Western countries actually do not speak English. Most Western countries do not exactly follow the same system. So what applies to what I'm going to say today does not really apply to all Western countries. And one very last thing is that, as my colleague mentioned in her email, I come from a British university, so I know how the British system works. That's where I did my PhD. That's where I work now. Well, that's where I'm going to go back in September. Now I work in Nigeria, I work at IFRA. But as you can hear as well, I'm French, and I did part of my education in France as well. So I know the French system, which is not too dissimilar to other systems in Europe, in mainland Europe. Okay. So I will try to talk about these two systems somehow, and this might apply or not to Germany, Spain, Italy. That's another matter. Okay. That was a long introduction just to tell you. Kind of to give you a bit of a kind of caveat before I start talking. So let's go. So today we're going to talk about how to send an application by email, how to structure a CV, best practices to write cover letters, and how to formulate a research proposal. All this might sound a bit patronizing. You might think, how to write an email, how to prepare a CV. And I would please ask me questions or tell me if I am. It's not my objective at all. What I'm trying to do here today is really to talk about the best ways to do things quickly in a kind of efficient way. Okay, I've received feedback from Nigerians in the past who told me that they'd be interested in knowing more about how to send an application by email, how to structure a CV, how to write a cover letter, or how to formulate a research proposal. The first one is about before applying. I call it zero. That's the title, zero, because actually that's what you're supposed to do. Even before doing anything, you've got to do three things. You've got to check the eligibility criteria. For example, is the scholarship open to Nigerian nationals? For example, one quick one. See, the other day I made a mistake. I forwarded a PhD offer, scholarship offer to someone in the history department, but the scholarship was only open to British nationals. See, so I should have checked myself before, but that's something you need to check as well. Okay. The second one is a deadline. It's like, do I have time to send in my application? Which goes in with the third point behind me, which is about the references, which is I can tell you a lot about. I tend to write quite a lot of references, for quite a few different individuals, students I've had in the past, current students, and I think they work, how they work, that's the good thing. And the one thing I want to know is that when should I send it, why should I send it, and when should I send it? So why, so which position are we talking about, and when should I send it for? Why? Because actually, imagine I've got a job, I'm doing other things at the same time, I've got maybe other references to write, I need to be aware basically of all of this in advance, okay? So before I do all of this, please, before you submit any application, please remember to check with referees that they are available. As simple as that. Okay? What I tend to do myself, because I write a lot of references, is that I tailor it to each individual. Obviously, there's no standard reference. But if the two positions are similar, I just tend to tweak the same reference. See? But still, I want it to be tailored to each individual. See, I tend to know all my students. That's why I create this kind of relationship, and I want to know what they want to do. I talk to them. I try to say good things about them so they can get the position. That's the aim of this whole thing. Remember that references are really, really important for American and British universities. They tend to be less so for other European countries. They will ask for references, but it's not as crucial, I would say. It's not, having a reference is not as, it's seen as a kind of a bit old-fashioned, I guess, in mainland Europe. I guess it's one way of putting it, but British and American universities still do it. Sending application. Here, sounds very obvious, but I'm talking about this. Remember here that you might want to have an email address which is quite easy to understand. Sometimes if they are, if it's the email address you had when you were a teenager, where your favorite film star or favorite or something like that, this might not be the best thing to do. Try to have something that someone can recognize. It doesn't matter it's .com or .co.uk or .ng, or it's not the problem at all. It's just something where people can recognize your name. I guess that's the point. Okay, so that's people know if they look for your name in their inbox, they can retrieve your email. That's the point here. Email title, try to make it clear. I'm sure by this time you have understood that I tend to receive quite a few emails every day. So if the title is not clear, I will, sometimes I will skip, I will not have a look at it. It could also be a reason for which your email ends up in the spam folder of of the person who's supposed to read the email. So remember to have a good title. Content, please do not send empty emails. I've received quite a few empty emails in the past. Remember one thing, that in many Western universities people don't print PDFs. In Nigeria here, I've noticed people tend to print PDFs, and if you send a letter to someone, it's printed and it ends up on someone else's desk, and it's photocopied many times with stamp and signature. I think it could be like, it used to be a bit like that as well, but now more and more people tend to not to print the emails. Okay, so remember to have a short email introducing you and what you're doing. Try to attach all documents which are needed. Remember, if you don't attach all the required documents, I'm afraid to say that we cannot consider any application without all the required documents. Sometimes there's someone sneaking to write one email, one CV quickly. It's not enough, maybe. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. Sounds like obvious. I'm sure you've heard this before, but remember that. If you want to become an academic, if you want to do a master's, a PhD, if you want to get an academic position, the point is that your objective will be to write something understandable. You might need to use some complicated words, but try to not to do it too often. That's what I'm trying to say. Don't say too much. That's what I said before. Maybe try to think about how your proposed research would align with your supervisor. Well, would align with the research interests of your supervisor. So what do I mean? See, for example, myself, I work in England on the history of Nigeria. I teach the history of Nigeria in England. So if I receive an email from a prospective student, the students will try to show the link between their own research and what I've done in the past, actually show me that they're interested in what I'm doing as well. It doesn't mean they need to do exactly the same thing. Myself, I've worked on the history of the northeast of Borno. See that my students don't need to work on the history of Borno. They can work on the history of any part of Nigeria or West Africa. But they might find themes in common. I'm interested in borders, boundaries. I'm interested in digital tools as well. See, I'm interested in all of that. And if they tell me that they are a group who can have this in common, that could be interesting. It's true. I could see myself having a cup of coffee, a cup of tea with the students and discussing their PhD topic. As simple as that, really. Try to target a potential supervisor. That's my point. Choose one or two in the same faculty, in the same department, and try to target them. Say, look, you two, I could work with you, but you might not be able to work with my colleagues who specialize in Australian history. Australia is quite far from Africa. But sometimes we've got things in common actually with my colleagues specializing in Australian history, see what themes. Anyway, clear title, I already said that. One thing which is quite interesting is that how society has changed quite a bit in many Western countries in the last 20, 30 years. To fight against any form of sexism, first, do not address doctors or professors by their, by Mr. or Mrs. In general. Just give them title, okay? The doctor, the professor, because it's they've got a title, they worked hard to get a title, and I guess it's worth doing. They deserve it, I suppose. My colleague, they want titles that are used for that, I guess, in English-speaking world. That's why it's important. The last name is important here. Last name. I know it can be a honorific way to address someone in many West African countries. I can be called Dr. Vincent. It's a nice way of calling me sometimes, you are Mr. Vincent. But Vincent is my first name. See, if I were in Europe, if I were in England, the first time you would meet me, or in the US especially, you would call me Dr. Hiribarren. See, that would be the way I'd be addressed. The thing is, if you know me, after a while I could tell you, look, you can call me Vincent. But the first time you call to someone, especially in the US and in the UK, use their titles. If you talk to someone as well who's not a doctor or professor, and this person sees herself as a woman, try to use MS, okay? We don't use marital status titles anymore, Mrs. or Miss, I guess, in the written language in particular. We tend to use MS, which doesn't say anything about any marital status. Like men, Mr. Mrs. is very hard to pronounce. But it's just when you write, I suppose, But try to avoid, this kind of marital status names. The same applies. I'm talking about this example because it's quite important. The same applies in the rest of continental Europe, where I guess titles are less used. See, when I go to France, I'm not called doctor. My parents find it funny. They would think I'm a medical doctor. See, people would call me Mr. Hiribarren. See. And they would call everyone in France, for example, Madam. We don't care about the marital status, Madam, okay? Madam is for everyone, married or unmarried, single, we don't care, that's the point, okay? So there's a different academic culture there as well. In Germany, you can be Dear Doctor Professor, you can be Doctor Professor in Germany, you can be Doctor Doctor, you can be, I think, there's a lot of combinations in Germany. It's quite interesting as well, so pay attention to these conventions. There are conventions, but pay attention to them. And if you talk about someone else in an email, maybe you can be careful about pronouns. You might have noticed that more and more English speakers in America and the UK tend to precise their pronouns. He, she, they, to respect the way they want to be called. And you might find it at the bottom of the signature. You might find it on their Twitter handle. You might find it on their web page. Okay, sorry.
On the CV sometimes. On the
CV, you're right, you're totally right on the CV. We try to be, just to show that you have to pay attention to that, basically. That's my point. Yes. See here, there was an email, which was sent to IFRA a few years ago when we had this kind of scholarship called Tony Lumelu Foundation Scholarship. See the title, the second title in particular. So that's quite an interesting one. See here, I understood the message. Yeah, I can tell you we understood the message. Producer was in charge of it, But see, try to make it, a bit, There are lots of examples online. It's not for me to tell you how to do it. It's just one example. Don't do that, basically. Okay. Let's carry on. Don't do that either. Empty email. Let's carry on. Don't do that. Urgent? No. If I receive too many urgent emails, I delete them. Okay, and now something for you to know. I receive lots of emails. If you send me files, try to name them in a recognizable way. Maybe I'm a bit straight. I tend to name all my files in the same way. Maybe that's why. But try to put file name _CV or something which will be recognizable. So that's when I see the file, I know what it is. I don't need to open it every time. I'm sure all of you have in your computers tens of thousands of files. You don't know what they are. Have you got that? Yeah. You just what is that? I done it once, 2 weeks ago. Try to use the same font. You'll be surprised to know the number of emails or applications I receive written in different forms, which tend to come from exactly copy and pasting. It's like people copy and paste stuff without checking it. Either you can clear the formatting on Word. You can clear the formatting on everything. So write your email, you copy and paste everything in Word, clear the formatting, and paste it in your email. That's one way. Some email, like Outlook or Gmail as well, make you clear the formatting most of the time. So try to so that my eyes don't go, all strange. When I read your emails. Remember, in general, that I will read 40 and 50 CVs. The worst I've read for one position was for an academic position in the UK, was 100 and 120 CVs in 2 weeks. There was there was no, that first. I want to tell you one thing. I didn't want to not to give. Well, how to phrase that? I wanted each candidate to have the same chance, basically, for me to give the same amount of attention to every candidate. That's the intention, I suppose. But it's true, if a CV or a cover letter is all over the place, if it's not clear, you're not doing yourself a service, basically. That's my point. Okay, that's. I need to know what your skills are. I need to know what your research is all about. That's what I need to know when I read your CV, when I read all of that. Okay, I guess that's my point here. When you write a CV as well, try to think in reverse chronological order. What does it mean? Put your latest publications or your latest positions first, and then go back in time. Okay. So if you publish something in 2021, it will come first, and if you go to your MA in 2018, it will come second. See, and so that's the idea. Try to make it, clean. Try to make it in reverse chronological order. In the US and the UK, you do not include a photograph when you create a CV, which is not the case in France. We can still include a photograph. It's more people, less and less people include them actually, because it was seen as a form of discrimination against, I guess, the way people look, against age as well, for ageism as well. Clearly, we need to understand what you specialize in and what your education is. Don't make it too long. There's no need to elaborate forever. Just I want to remember this name. This person is specialized in these areas, and this person, she or he, has done this, and that. Then has published this, and that. Then these reviews. Why are I separated publications and reviews? I will go back to publications. I need to understand when I read a CV what publications are. Sometimes what publications are like. They look fancy with titles and with brackets, place, publisher, date, page numbers. That's for a book. If it's an article, it tends to be inverted comma, title, closed inverted comma, comma, title in italics, then you got the numbers, then the page numbers. I need to understand basically what the items are, and sometimes it's not clear when I read a presentation. It's not very clear what's happening. Oh, sorry, a CV. It's not very clear what I've got in front of me. Here, what I'm interested in is to know what publications are. Is it a book? Is it a journal article? Is it a book chapter? Is it an article published in a peer-reviewed journal? Something published in a different journal? Is it a book review? See here, that's what I'm trying to say here. That's why I separated both. Why? Because book reviews are not as time-consuming as journal articles, even if they are intellectual work without doubt, but not as time-consuming. It's not the same work. My point here is basically to help the reader understand what publications are. Okay, the nature of publications. Okay, we can't expect you to have so many publications, but we can ask you not to cheat on your publications. Okay, tell me what you're doing basically. No need to tell me things you haven't done. It's not the aim of the CV. Try to include full references so that if I'm interested, I can find the articles online. More and more things are online now, and say if I've got a candidate, I'm thinking, oh, that's quite interesting. I like to read quickly what they are doing. Let's Google, or let's go and have a look at at this article. Let's have a look at this book review. Okay, that's the point here, that we can check what you're doing. All right. Okay. If you're applying for a teaching job, maybe you want to include teaching experience. At least the course is taught. Something which you might not want to include is that the codes of the course is taught. Each university has different codes. The reference numbers in front of each module is taught. But maybe have you taught in the past? Some of you have you taught, guys? Maybe not. No. You have? Okay. You have as well. Okay. You see, sometimes universities have fancy codes, but other universities will recognize them. Academic awards and grants, obviously, membership of professional bodies, conference papers, conference organized, service, and experience, language skills. Remember that many of you, when you're based in Nigeria, you tend to have amazing linguistic skills. Really, many of you in this room will speak at least 2 or 3 languages. That's incredible. Think about it. Think hard about it. Many of us don't speak many languages in Europe, and that's clear an advantage you might have over other candidates. Okay, so try to say if you've got a proficient level in, I don't know, can be Hausa, write it down. Okay, write down, for example. See this list here. It doesn't need to be in that order. It's just one order. Okay. Depending on the job, you might want to have a different order. Depending on the job, you might have different sections. But just to give you an idea of all this. But let me stress, let me go back to this point here. I really want you to understand that I will read a lot of CVs, 40 or 50. This CV needs to be clear. It needs to be clearly structured. I want to read the CV and understand what the person is doing. I want to understand that quickly. Without that, I won't be able at all to understand just what you're doing. I won't remember you. Again, I'll try to give the same amount of attention to each candidate. I'm not trying to say, look, you shouldn't do this, look, you shouldn't do that. But still, try to remember that there will be some people who are going to read your application. That's going to help you, definitely. Is that right? Yeah? Let's carry on. Well, that's what I just said basically. I forgot how to slide about this one. Make it neat, make it attractive, prioritize. I want to remember your strengths, I want to remember your strengths really. For this position. Maybe the strengths for another position are not relevant. That's the point here. If you got a CV for one scholarship, that might work. If you got a CV for a teaching job, that might be the same type of CV you need, okay? Let's carry on. Okay, degrees and other qualifications. That's for your cover letter and in general. Here it's about cultural differences in general and about grades, and I will go back to this, okay, in a second. Nigerian degrees can be understood in the UK and the US. You are in Nigeria using a British system basically. That's a British legacy. And that's, even the institution we are in at the moment is a very Western institution. Somehow, universities are very Western construct. The way we put, young people together to learn about this kind of stuff together is very Western construct. The degrees you receive have Western names, and they were built, and they were created here in Nigeria during the colonial period. There's a lot to be said about that, about, this aspect. It's not what it's all about today, okay? The point is to apply in the UK or the US or Europe. But that's, I know this is the case here or the rest of the colonial world in South America, Asia or here. Remember one thing as well, is that most Western countries do not use the British system. A 2-1 will not be understood by anyone in Germany or France. No one will know what it is, okay? No one will understand. I remember myself learning about it, I thought, well, with it. So Juliet was the same, I'm sure, what are you talking about? It's just, different systems. Simple as that. There's no better system, I'm saying to say that, it's just different. If interesting, 2-1 comes from Cambridge. I did a bit of digging, and it was just at the start, it was just a percentage. It's out of 100, but actually the full mark is out of 90, and actually it becomes as complicated as tennis can be. If you're interested in tennis scores, that's why they're also weird. But anyway, to go back to that, remember that if you talk to a German university, let's say, if you want to apply to a German university, they will not understand what a 2-1 is, most of the time, okay? So in your cover letter, you will have to say your grade here, your mark, in Nigeria, obviously, that's what your transcript says. But remember that, one thing is that you need to explain if you are, I guess, among the best students, if it's a good mark, if it's an average mark. Obviously you might want to write an average mark, but you might want to say if you're among the best students or not. If you are reluctant to do that, ask your referee to write this, okay? Ask your referee to explain what your degree means in general. I'm sure most of you might remember that, say, have you had a first in the past? Have you had a first? Yes? Yeah, maybe. For a mark, for a grade? Yes, maybe. It's very, in Nigeria it's very good to have a first, am I right? It can be very hard to have a first. But remember, if you go to the US, having a first is much easier. They're more poor with first, and even the UK, a bit less easy than the US, but still easier. So, and still you're supposed to use the same system. So how do you explain that to someone? How come? Is that because professors in Nigeria are harsher? Maybe not. It's just because the range is not the same. As simple as that. Professors in the US tend to put the range very high, in the UK a bit lower, and in Nigeria a bit lower as well. It doesn't mean there's no hierarchy here. It's just the way things are. Simple as that. So either you or your reference, your referee, could write what your position is in general in the cohort. You know, among the 5%, top 5%, something like that. Okay. See, to give a relative idea of your ranking to the reader. See, if let's say I had never worked in the UK, and I heard about I read your transcript, say your BA transcript or your BSc transcript, I would not have understood it clearly. You know, even if I were a lecturer in Germany or France, I would not understand it, unless I paid special attention. Someone had to explain it to me. Okay, so you can have this kind of cultural explanation behind it. Okay, so that's the point basically. So here, that's the two last points, but I already mentioned that. But I mean it. Try to ask your referee this kind of information. Try to ask him to write this kind of information. I'm among the top 5%. I'm among this, among that. If something needs to be explained to a foreign audience, since you want to travel to foreign countries, try to ask your referee to explain the situation. See here, I don't want to, my point is not to discuss this point or to have any judgment. See here, I know many students struggle to have their transcripts. It's a fact, okay? And sometimes they apply to foreign universities and don't have the transcripts, okay? We know that. I know this problem exists. A referee could write this down. For this and that reason, actually, this person could not obtain their transcript, Simple as that. Okay? No judgment here, it's not the point. The point is just to explain a few things. Okay? Myself, my university in the UK, it's much easier to have transcripts from other universities in the UK. I'm well aware of that. And see if I receive an application from a Nigerian student, I know for a fact that I might not see the exact transcript, I might see a temporary paper, And I know why, I know why, because things can be difficult sometimes. But my colleagues didn't know that, So a reference could explain that. That's my point. Okay? And sometimes I got the same. I received an application from Indonesia, and one colleague explained to me something which I can't remember now exactly, but something which explains why the grading system didn't work so well. Anyway, one cultural item which I didn't understand, basically. That's the point. Okay? That's the idea. Let's stop here for the moment, because now we can talk about cover letters. Do you have any questions about CVs? No? Is it clear? That's why I went quite fast, because I thought it'd be quite easy. So, should we carry on? Yeah, please.
Question about professors, writing doctors in the same faculty. So what if you send an email to like 2 people and they didn't respond to you? Can you send email to others?
In that case, yes, obviously. The thing is that, you need to email professors who are likely to be able to work with you, okay? That's the point. Not to all of them, okay? So if you email professors in the same university, since it can be a big university, it can be more than 3, it can be 5, 6 sometimes. So yes. And sometimes someone don't reply as well. Yes, we are, yes.
Okay, is it appropriate the CV to put maybe the date of birth, maybe the marital status, and other things in your CV that's at the international level concerned?
It's not expected to have date of birth unless the scholarship is for people under the age of say 28, okay? So no need to put that unless there's a time condition. Again, marital status, no, definitely not, because that could be considered as discrimination against married women who, if they are pregnant, might not receive a position, might not get some funding. So no need for marital status, no need for that. Okay, and it's true actually. Well, anyone could do, basically I guess people are not interested in some things, okay? So the citizenship only, because I guess this might determine the nature of the scholarship, I suppose, okay? But sometimes you don't even need that, Sometimes scholarships are open to everyone on the planet, in which case, your name, your qualifications, your publications, And say if you, let's say, let me give you an example. If I see that you finished your BA in 2010, I can suspect that maybe you were born at the end of 1980s, beginning of 1990s. I can guess, not. I can guess as well. There are ways of guessing, but it's not the point is not to discriminate anyone, either for the marital status or for their age or this kind of stuff. Okay. Any other questions, maybe? Religion as well is not something which you need to indicate. Email address is something which you will need to indicate, in case someone wants to contact you. Okay. There are things that people don't know. Marital status, religion, personal stuff that is irrelevant. Yes, I've received quite a lot of CVs from Nigeria, and I've seen a lot of Nigerian CVs, and it's true. Sometimes I feel like they are very well written for Nigerian audience, but my colleagues in the UK might not want to know all of that, basically. So that's as simple as that. Yes. Okay. Cover letters. Have you written many cover letters in the past? Yes. How do you find it? You're smiling. Not easy?
Yeah.
It's true. If you want to find a job like outside of academia, it's quite different. Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah. Yes, you're right. Not easy. Yes, not easy. It's not the hardest part. I've written to get my job in the UK. I've written how many? I've got a folder. I got a folder on my hard drive. It's still there with more than 60. I've got more than 60 subfolders. So I've written more than 60. Obviously, I didn't write 60 different ones. I've written, I guess, 7, 8 different ones, and so I tweaked some, 7 or 8 of them to different positions. But still, it's quite a hard thing to write. Okay, it's quite a hard thing to do. Why? Because actually, you don't know what kind of information you need to give. You don't want to give too much. You don't want to give too little. What's the right proportion? Maybe Bimbo, you just written cover letters, am I right? Quite a few. And one of them was successful recently. Can you tell us what made it successful? Okay? What was the structure? Can you tell the structure? Maybe not the content, the structure.
For scholarships, it would mean a statement of purpose or a motivation statement.
Yes.
And oftentimes I see people starting or beginning with the same style of I was born this and that, I had this challenge, or perhaps I came from the trenches, I'm trying to live this and all. But that has been overflowed, because oftentimes I follow academics or academicians on Twitter, and they said they are tired of that style of writing, that okay, it is best to go straight to the point. I am writing this application for this and this scholarship. Then the opening statement should be, as a matter of fact, it should be enticing to you. If your opener, for instance, now it's just how would I put it now? It's the same style. Many people, for instance, a scholarship application can have like 300 applicants. For instance, the University of Pennsylvania, where I was rejected of recent, they said they had more than 500 PhD applications. So if they will be sieving through applications, and then they have like the first 20 perhaps came from Africa and then has the same writing style opener, they feel okay, this is like the norm. But then let the opener be enticing, let it be different. Let it be catchy. Yes, the catchy word is like the most important thing. And then emphasize on your skill sets that makes you a strong candidate for that application. Okay, what are your skill sets? what are the researches it is that you have done? What papers have you written? What field works have you done? What methodological training have you attended? What makes your topic like something that a supervisor would be willing to supervise you, like would interest a supervisor? Okay, you are saying in your application that okay, you are writing on this and this topic. Understand the fact also that the person who could be supervising you might not have experience supervising, let's say, a student from West Africa. Sell yourself to the person. You know, it's not like you are trying to get a scholarship by emotions, or like trying to work on the emotions of the person it is you are writing to. Oftentimes, when you write something, you know quite well that someone from Hong Kong is also trying to get in to this department. So what would make me tick? What would make me different? What would be outstanding to this professor? So for instance, a scholarship I made to the UK of recent, not a scholarship, a cover letter and a cold email. When I sent the cold email to the professor last December, the professor mentioned that he does not have expertise supervising someone from West Africa, especially on that topic, but that he is interested in it because nobody has ever worked on that topic in that department, and then he wouldn't mind bringing another professor to co-supervise. So in the response email he sent to me, it was like, okay, this is interesting, this is catchy, and this is my own expertise. He began to sell himself to me too, that I feel I could be a great supervisor for this intended project. So no one will give you a scholarship based on, okay, I feel this person needs to be removed from the trenches, in quotes. Okay, sell yourself to them, and I think that's just what I have to say on this one.
Thank you. No, thank you. Very nice. Well, I'm going to say as well today we will structure as well. But here, you could behind me, basically pretty much the same kind of advice I gave when I talked about CVs. First, the file name, make it obvious, like the CV, so that it can be retrievable very easily. Choose a professional font, Garamond, Times, Calibri, got a lot of them. Do your proofreadings. Don't make it too long, sometimes long, sometimes that's not very good. Do not send a letter which should be tailored to the specific position you're applying to. And basically, something very, very, very important here. I told you before that I've written a lot of applications to get my job. The job I've got now, even to get before scholarships and stuff like that. But you need to pay attention to the job you're applying to the scholarship you're applying to. Mrs. Ruffley here just told me as well that she used keywords which were included in the job offer, basically, in her cover letter. So I want to show that you know how to adapt the language, use the language of the job offer or the scholarship offer. Why? Because you show that you understand, what they want. And that's why I call myself, do your homework. Do your homework, basically. Just go and have a look at the website. Have a look at your potential supervisor's website. Have a look at your potential colleagues' website, Qualifications. And how would how would you be part of this institution? That's as simple as that somehow. As simple as that's quite clear. Look, if you want, I was talking about my colleagues at IFRA today, and they're all aware of what I'm doing here. I've done in terms of research, and that's how we work together. They were interested in what I've done in the past and what I want to do in the future. I was just talking about Mrs. Ruffley just before this meeting, and that's the same basically. Try to show that you're interested in your stuff, in all this research. Why? Because actually this is you won't be on your own. Basically, you need to be part of the team, and you'll be part of the team in terms of in the buildings, obviously, but also in intellectual terms. And something to a point I would go back to in terms of having conversations with your colleagues. How will you engage with your colleagues on intellectual level? Basically, that's my point. How will you talk to them? What will you talk about if you have a cup of tea with them? If you have lunch with them, as well. You may not just talk about the last football games. You want to talk about something else. That's the point there. Okay, so do your homework. Try to understand what's going on. in the institution and host institution, and just it's also for you. Why? Because do you see yourself working there? It's important. It's important as well. You know, I understand that you want to. I totally understand the fact that at some point I've applied to many jobs. You know, many jobs and many positions. But would you see yourself in one place where you don't have anything in common with people? Maybe not. So that's the point here. That's the idea as well. It's for them, also it's for you, and that's important. Okay? Let's carry on. Okay, here this applies to cover letters in the English-speaking world. You will not be surprised to know that the French speakers do it the other way around, you know, as usual. That's what I say. So your name and address goes to the top right corner in the English-speaking world. The dates it just goes below. Address is name and address is left aligned just after that. And then after that, remember you've got the salutations, dear prof, doctor, last name, as I said before, Mr., Mrs., last name, dear sirs, madams, to whom it may concern, if you don't know who you're writing to. The last formulation tends to work quite well, because sometimes it's a committee, so you don't know if it's a sirs, madams, profs, doctors, you just don't know. That's it. No, I won't be offended if I read to whom you concern, you know, if it's for a group of people, okay? Simple as that. Let's carry on. First paragraph, why are you writing? Why am I reading this letter? And that's exactly what Bimbo said before. For what position are you applying? Well, basically that's it, you know. In the first paragraph, I need to understand why I'm reading this letter. It can be short, you know. And I do the same when I write a reference. So I'm writing a letter for Mr. Mopo to support his application for this. I'm writing a letter. I'm writing this letter. I would like to apply for this scholarship that you're offering at your university. First paragraph and paragraph. Okay? And after that, you know why you're reading the letter. Middle paragraph. Who are you? How do your academic background and your academic research interests match the position you're applying for? So it's a classical, you know, what will you do there, basically, you know? And I guess here, I will go back to this first one later on for the cover letter. It's important to remember to think about you once you're there. What will you do with people? Will you just do your stuff, the one written in your research projects? Or how will it, you know, work with other people's interests there? What can you offer to the employers? That's the way I try to reformulate it. What can you give, you know, basically? See, for example, I've done some interviews with some people in, you know, my current job, and I could see myself teaching with the candidates. Another time, I was reading a PhD proposal, and the candidates in the cover letter was saying that they could teach certain things, and I could see them teaching this course. You know, really, I could see them. And it's true, it worked very well, and the applicant had made the effort of looking at what we were teaching. I suspect that the candidate knew someone in the institution, but that's normal. That happens. Do not rewrite your CV, but make the connection between your background and your experiences and the application requirements clear. No need for that. I've got your CV. No need to tell me what your application, where you went to school, this kind of stuff. I can see it. Final paragraph. Thank the institution for considering your application. Don't make it too long. Make it short and sweet. Okay, you don't need to spend too much time. Now what I'm going to try to explain, the middle paragraphs, okay? The first one is like easy, well, the greeting is easy, the first one is easy, the last one is easy. Now, what are we going to talk about in the middle paragraphs? And that's what makes a good cover letter, okay? Now I've just talked about what's around it, and now I'm going to talk about what's inside. Let's carry on. Okay, sorry, let's carry on this one. I don't know why I got this one here, sorry. I've got loads of them, I think. Can you move on, please, again? And again. Again, so this one can see it. Okay. This works? It's a research proposal. Okay.
I go back to the...
No, yes, sorry. The research, we'll go back to the letter. I want to talk about the letter. Sorry, go back to the letter. But I doubt Well, stay here because you can see the letter. Oh, okay. I want to show you in the letter what I was interested in. Okay, but let me show you from here. Can you see these 2 points? Points 1 and 2. Who are you and what can you offer? Here, basically, I expect someone to say why they're motivated by this job. Okay, why this job gives them something which is in line with their whole research trajectory. Say there's a scholarship for people interested in I don't know, the history of the economic history of West Africa, let's say. Okay, PhD scholarship in the economic history of West Africa. In this first paragraph, you say, "Oh look, it's interesting. In my MA, I wrote exactly about the economic history of Ijebu, for example. You know, Ijebu economic history. That's what I'm interested, and that's what my conclusions. But I realized that actually I need to do more. I need to do more sources. For example, sources in England. For example, sources in the rest of Nigeria, the southwest Nigeria. Maybe sources across the border with the Republic of Benin. I need to do all of that. See what I'm doing here? I'm showing how my previous career, it's a big term, but how my previous experience, I guess, intersects with basically what the PhD proposal is about. PhD scholarship is about. Okay? Does it make sense? Yes? I really want you to think about that. Don't need to say, I want to do this and that. Say exactly what you want to do is exactly what they're looking for. Okay? That's what I'm trying to say. Second thing, what can you offer to your employer? Before, remember, I talked about teaching. Maybe you have heard that your employer is interested in teaching. You might do your teaching. So talk about your previous teaching experience and how this might help you teach this and that in your host institution. Okay, if the scholarship comes from teaching, it happens sometimes. Okay, sometimes it will come with some specific skills. You want to talk about what your skill. Mr. Akinde in front of me is very good with films, and maybe is very interested in linking history and filming together, or social sciences and filming in general. So maybe that's how this can interact. See, one specific skill, which is his, and the way you can intersect with what these people are looking for. Okay? So it's about what you will bring, which is not that obvious in your CV, but which would benefit your university. It could be teaching, it could be a skill, it could be anything which you think might be helpful. Does it help? Yeah? This is really something which goes beyond the research proposal, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But that's something which I want you to remember. Here in this cover letter, someone will find your motivation. Someone will find what you can't express in CV. Don't repeat the CV. Just say what you can't express in the CV. Say how this is interesting because this is exactly what you're interested in, and because you worked on this in the past. Also because look about this skill which goes very well with that, because I could help you do this, I could help you do that. I've got this experience in organizing seminars. Okay. Mr. Omopo before, Mr. Ruffley before, organized seminars for IFRA. Okay, they've done that, and that is a skill that someone would be interested in your university. Why? Because actually, this is quite time-consuming organizing all of this in events such as this one. It's quite time-consuming. You've got publicity, you've got emailing, you've got the emails, the register, you've got the material, the equipment, the whole this kind of stuff. And someone having this kind of experience can be good. And if if I want to have a dynamic PhD student or even MA student, I would say, look, whoa, this person has this kind of experience. Maybe he or she hasn't published a lot. Well, it happens. They are early career scholars, but still they can do this and that. Okay, and you can tell, teaching, filming, or organizing seminars are not skills which are typically the ones which are seen as the most deeply embedded in your discipline. If you do sociology, if you do film studies, well, film studies is a good word actually. if you do anthropology, if you do history, okay. But that's something which could be definitely a bonus, a plus on your CV, in your cover letter. Okay. See, now I've read your cover letter. I know that not only you studied the same thing in the past, you want to expand, but also you've got this skill. I will remember you. I will remember you. I promise you, I remember your name. I know your CV, I know your skills, I know your cover letter, I know what you're good at, basically, and what you can offer to the university. Okay? And finally, the research proposal. This one is about what you give to the world. I want to understand, once I've read your research proposal, what you will bring to scholarship in general. Okay? So, once again, name, that's very important, the way you name the file. Once again, remember that it needs to be tailored for each institution. Please have it read by different people. If possible, as suggested by Mr. Ruffley as well, if possible, try to remember to have it read by someone who is in the same institution. Why? Because they will know, look, you can improve this, you can improve that, and they will understand, what the requirements are, and that's something which can be very useful for you. And that's really something which can be useful in general, even for your CVs and cover letters. Have someone from the host institution reading your whole application can be very, very good.
Yeah, I think my advice was also to try to get the research proposal of someone who applied the year before or in the years before to the same position or to the same institution or at least to the same country and who got the position, to have an idea of the order they want you to put things, and also to just start, to know where to start and what is important and what has to what length it has to be, because I think it's quite different between institutions. Some institutions, they will ask for 2 pages, other for 15 pages. So
style. Here, something which I've read in many applications coming from outside of Europe is I'm talking about dictionary or encyclopedia definitions. And I know that you encourage you this when you die in Nigeria. Once again, it's not a comment about what's going on in Nigeria. It's a comment about what's expected in Europe. Okay. We don't expect you to comment on the dictionary definition or the encyclopedia definition. It's definitely not necessary. Why? Because actually you don't have enough space. Give yourself a space to talk about your research and what you hope to achieve when doing your research, and that's very, very important. Otherwise, you will never be able to have space to talk about your own stuff, because the dictionary or the encyclopedia is not you; that's someone else who wrote it. Okay. Something else, avoid jargon. Don't get me wrong, I expect people to know what words mean in general, but I'm not, it's not because I'm not impressed by big words, just let me put it frankly, I'm not impressed by big words. Try to explain something to me in a very clear manner, and if you manage to do that, I know you can teach someone in the first place, you can explain things, you can write things clearly as well. I might be personally obsessed by this thing, being concise and being clear. That's what I tend to mark in my mark essays myself. But it's something which is, I don't want people to blabber on forever, basically, to use jargon. Go to the point, okay? Go to the point. Check proof of statement, obviously. Do not write anything which does not relate to research. Do not show off, basically, that's the point here. I'm not, impressed by people naming names, giving names about, big authors they've read in the past, if they don't use them. If you use them in your own research, please do. Mention them. I will understand what your own research is based on. If you just want to tell me that you've read, all the big thinkers that were assigned to you when you were in level 300, no need for that. For example, myself, I'm interested in students interested in African history. If they're just interested in repeating names of European authors who have written on African history, I would think it's a bit weird, because many authors from Ibadan, for example, have written on the history of West Africa, or even the whole of Africa. That we find weird if it's not mentioned. So I would expect it to be mentioned. See? I wouldn't be impressed by someone just mentioning European names. You call it whatever you want, you can be decolonization of knowledge or not, it's not the problem. It's just a question of, being respectful to those who have written on subjects before. So I would expect to find the names of those who have written on your subject, on your area, but we not expect to find names of people like some people like you liked that will have nothing to do with it, basically. Okay? But it's a good point. Put an emphasis on the research questions and how your methodology is going to answer them. Why? If you're applying for an MA or a PhD now, you don't have the answers yet. Sure, I can't expect an applicant to know the answers. I cannot expect an applicant to tell me I'm going to publish this book tomorrow based on that. No. I will want to see how you formulate your questions. I will want to see how you think about all of this. Okay? How will you think about all of this? Maybe you will think about questions based on your readings of one scholar in particular. You know, one scholar in particular influenced you to think about one question, and that's something which you will find interesting. Okay, that's one way of seeing it. Maybe you will find that one question comes from one thing you've noticed in the literature, in the bibliography. You've noticed that in the recent years there's been a tendency for historians to talk, or historians or sociologists, to use one concept in particular. Why? Maybe it's interesting. Maybe you're interested in that concept. Maybe you want to revisit that concept. So Matthew, for example, you're doing sociology, am I right?
Yeah.
Can you give me one concept which has been fashionable in the last 10 years in sociology? There you go. Have you seen many articles or books trying to revisit that notion, that concept in the last 10 years as well?
Yeah.
See? So maybe if you had to write a PhD application today, you would see, oh, maybe not to do yourself, but I'm interested in that concept and I can try to apply it to this situation. See? Because it's been like in literature for the last 10 years. That's one way of doing it. Okay? See, that's one way of using the names, the authors I mentioned before. Try to formulate questions based on that. And that's why I'm interested in that, because when I read a research proposal, when I read, actually any academic work, I'm interested in the way people think about things. I'm also interested in the answer, don't get me wrong, okay? I'll go back to that later. But also interested in the way they try to think about this. That's the intellectual work behind it. One other thing I'm interested in is the methodology. How are you going to reach your, how are you going to do it? What's the methodology? In anthropology, you use some tools, for example, for example, in history they use others, in geography they use others, For example, there's a researcher at the moment at IFRA-Nigeria, Mr. Jean Brun, who's a geographer. He's interested in the sensible geography of Oshogbo Forest. It's kind of fascinating way of understanding what people think about the forest today, and the city of Oshogbo in general. It's not just interested in the forest, but also in the city, and he wants to understand how people relate in the whole of Oshogbo. So using maps, he's asking people to draw maps in groups together, and that's a methodology. See, another colleague came from France a couple of months ago now, a bit less. She's called Dr. Guinard. She was very interested in the relationship between art and geography, and she worked with the sound artists to think about what happened to Beach Bar in Lagos. Okay, and she was asking the question to people, where's Beach Bar? And she tried to put it in sound as well, asking the question and see how it worked. And there was a small exhibition here a couple of months ago. See, that's what we're interested in, basically. How are you going to achieve this? What are your tools? Obviously, we tend to work in different disciplines, and each discipline tends to have its own tools. But think about the tools as well. You can be critical with the tools. See, some tools need to be refined. See, for example, let me give you an example I know very well. I'm a historian, see? Historians have, in the 1960s, said, look, you can't write the history of West Africa with only colonial sources. That'd be a mistake, because you're going to have only one perception, that of the colonizer. That's as simple as that. If you interview people, that was Kenneth Dickey's, Kenneth, you heard about him, I'm sure, Kenneth Dickey's contribution to the scholarship. If you listen to other people, if you mix it with colonial sources, that's what you wanted to do, you might have a clearer picture, okay? Some people said actually let's get rid of criminal sources, let's just focus on oral history after that. After that, some people said actually if we just focus on oral history, people might lie and might not remember very well. See, it's true as well. So they went back to the written sources, but discovered that written sources are actually totally imperfect. They can give you, a partial view of what's happening, and that's where we are at the moment. Basically, we're a bit lost. It's an imperfect world. Both types of sources are imperfect, basically, and we've got to be imaginative sometimes. So why not use literature? Why not use music? Why not use this kind of stuff? See, I'm trying to think aloud about the evolution of the methodology used by historians of West Africa, or even Africa, in the last 60 years, I guess. Okay, but that's the point. Try to show that you're thinking critically about your methodology. Don't apply, one methodology because this is the way. This is the way. Doesn't work like that. Think critically, basically. That's my point. Methodology are just there to help you, not to hinder you, not to prevent you from doing anything. Methodologies are just there just tools. If the tool is not good enough, well, change the tool or modify it, tweak it a bit. Okay? Does it make sense? Yeah. So talk about methodology, but be critical. Okay? Because sometimes what I read in the research statement that someone applying a methodology. This is the recipe, like a recipe or like a dance. Like a dance in general. This is how do we do it, That doesn't work like that.
Quantitative methodologies, like models that are used maybe here, sometimes like in Nigeria. I've read in some Nigerian papers like that they are applied. And I think like for a research proposal headed to Europe, it's good if you can also add like some qualitative, like especially in sociology, like qualitative methodologies that are very like fashionable are very important at the moment in the sociological European field.
If you read book reviews, you can find the debates summarized by some professors who have more experience than all of us combined in this room, who will tell us basically what the field is like. It's quite important so that gives you this kind of perspective on things. Okay, that's what a good book review. That's what a good book review should be about, actually, to give you a bit of perspective. It's not about criticizing blindly someone. It's about giving you perspective, and it's about helping someone. I guess it's another debate. And I guess it's a question of theory as well. Some disciplines are more theory-laden than others. I'm thinking about political science, for example. There's a lot of theory. Some disciplines are quite reluctant to even theorize in the first place, so it really depends on your discipline. But again, the same point I had with with your tools, with methodology. Think about it critically. Why are you using this theory? Okay, you're using a theory. Well, why? Maybe it's good. But why is it worth using it in this context? Can it be refined? Can it be adapted to that situation? Does it need to? Maybe no need to reinvent the wheel. Maybe it works. But say it works. Say it. Okay. Sometimes don't feel like you got to be overcritical as well. I'm trying to encourage you to be critical. Sometimes I've seen it the other way around, but it's rarer. People were overcritical, spending too much time, criticizing something, and they were trying to show me they were critical, but at the same time, it's like, well, if it works, it works. And sometimes that's you just need to be tweaked or a bit adapted to the local background, to the local situation. That's all. Okay. But basically, if say in political science you use quite a lot of theory, for example, and some authors tend to be fashionable at some point, some authors tend not to be fashionable, and that's it. So that is, you can have a discussion about it. There can be a lot of different ways you can address these points, but try to be a bit critical and try to say how you adapt it, you tailor it to your own research proposal again. Okay, it's not a copy and paste from another essay you wrote for your professor 2 years ago. Okay, is that all right? That's the point. That's the point. Yeah. Okay, now that's the point. That's very interesting. Contribution to scholarship. I've got 2 slides about this, and the last one on feasibility of your research. How do you choose your research? That's a question I always feel very hard to difficult to answer. Maybe it's not about your personal life per se, even if you can become a bit personal in it, but it's about what led you to this. This can be in your cover letter. This can be here. So it depends on what you want to do. Okay. I don't want to say this is where it should be. It could be in your cover letter as well. But how did you choose this research? What led you to this? And I guess that's the main point here. How does your own research trajectory lead to your research project? It's about what many Westerners call at the moment your own positionality. Do you understand that term? Yeah? Your position. So what does it mean? Say, you can tell, I think you can tell quite easily, I'm a Bature, I'm an Oyibo, I'm a European turning up here in Nigeria doing research on Nigeria. Doing research as a white man in a different country could be fraught with biases. That could come with lots of racist, colonial biases. Obviously, it's not what I want, but still, it might be possible. That's quite clear. That it might be something which I might bring in with me, with my own education, with my own educational background. Maybe I don't realize it, maybe I don't see it. And maybe it's it's in me, but somehow I can't. There are ways of thinking I cannot unsee. Let's maybe put it this way. That I can acknowledge, but I can also say, look, I'm an outsider looking at themes I'm interested in. I was interested in the borders and territory of Borno, northeastern Nigeria, and there was territories and borders created by Europeans that I could talk about. I come from a border zone myself. In Europe, and I could talk about this kind of imposition. I can talk about the way we're created, and I can talk about the way they were. People have used them as well. Borders can be used by people today. So see, that's what I'm trying to talk about now. How my own life somehow has an impact on my research. So it's not my personal life. I'm not going to tell you what I had for breakfast, basically, all this kind of stuff. But I'm going to tell you basically how my own education can contribute, but also can somehow I need to be careful. But in the way I write, how I write it, and the way I try to share my knowledge, and I try to learn from other people. Okay, and that's it. So it's not that easy sometimes, but that's the point. Okay, that's the point. So I guess the question applies as well to your own research proposal. Say, let me go back to this example of economic history in West Africa. Say I'm from Ijebu, not personally, the applicant is from Ijebu. And they want to study Ijebu economic history. Yes, the applicants will know how to speak the language in the region. They will know people. They will definitely know lots of people. They will understand how things work, culturally speaking, much more than I ever will. That's definitely. But the other way around, if I write about my own hometown, or if this applicant writes about what is their own hometown, basically, what will happen is that we will be, I'm part of the problem as well, because I'm from a certain family, I come from this, I come from that, people will know me, so on and so forth. You see the point as well. You can be so much into it that you can be also part of the, it can be a lack of objectivity in that case as well. So see, there are advantages, there are also disadvantages, yeah. Okay? So I guess what I'm trying to get at with these two first points is that how does your own trajectory impact your research? It's about your position, okay, in general. Does it make sense? Yeah? What does your study tell us about larger issues? How does it challenge preconceived ideas and narratives that confirm the previous research? So, and the last point is about the same thing. What will you bring to scholarship in general? Let's go back to Ijebu. I've got nothing against Ijebu, so let's say I want to study trade in Ijebu in the 19th century, okay, or 18th century. Maybe I will find lots of cowries. Maybe, okay, maybe I'll find lots of cowries. Maybe I'll find all this. Maybe I'll find stuff which only happened in Ijebu, because Ijebu was maybe a big market and had a lot of cloth and cowries, for example. Okay, let's say cloth and cowries for the sake of the example. Okay, maybe what I will say about Ijebu will not apply to, I don't know, to places like Ibadan. Maybe it won't. Ibadan was in the 18th and 19th century, wasn't very well. It became big in the 19th century, but maybe it won't apply to Ife. Ife is not too far, but it's far enough to be different. See, and see, we can see IFRA-Nigeria, so we consider they're still Yoruba speakers, but still they are not, they don't have the same kind of history and this kind of stuff. See, you have a different history. And in that case, maybe my research cannot be duplicated elsewhere. So to go back to my point, is my research just about Ijebu, or is it about the economy of many West African cities in that case, or Yoruba cities in this case? Am I just studying one micro dot in the history of humanity, or am I studying something a bit larger? And I guess that's what I'm trying to get at. How does your research tell us things about larger issues? So maybe if you see cowries, maybe you can have a look at cowries throughout, the coast of the Bight of Benin, or maybe cowries between Ghana and Nigeria today. How does it challenge preconceived ideas and narratives? It's about the literature and the topic. Okay. Will your research change what we thought in the past about trade, in this case, in West African history? Does it confirm or contradict? Again, here, you might not reinvent the wheel. Again, you might not want to say, oh, look, this is totally new. I've discovered the lost city of Eldorado in South America. No. Maybe the story will be different. Maybe you will see actually people in Djibouti again. We're just using a different system, which was based on there was a loaning system among Yoruba cities in the 18th, 19th century. People put a bit of money every week in it, and they could lend it to other people. That was very Yoruba one system. See, maybe the system is very, very interesting and changes the way we talk about money in general in West Africa. It's not just basically West Africans didn't wait for the Europeans to arrive to have a monetary system. Okay, as simple as that. Okay, see, that's a larger idea. Okay, that contradicts European racist ideas about this. What will you bring to scholarship in general? An MA, even a small MA, will bring something small. It doesn't need to be big. To scholarship in general. I don't claim to have changed the way people write history, my ego is not there yet. Some historians might make it, but I'm definitely not there. So that's as simple as that. And that's what's your contribution? Make it clear. I want to rethink about the way people write about the anthropology of religion in universities, for example. Okay, that's good. That's good. It's not like it's not the biggest claim in the world, but it's a feasible one, and that's something we can achieve. That's kind of linked to my point after. Don't say that no one has done this kind of research in the past. Okay, you've seen this before. No one has done this. I'm the first one. You've seen this before. It tends to be men who do that. So it tends to be a very kind of male-centric approach to writing. I'm the best, I'm the strongest. No, it's very unlikely. That's the first thing. It's very unlikely. We can't be the first ones. Maybe if you find a subject which is totally new, maybe. But even that, people might have worked on similar topics, in the past, and all different places. Okay, so it's very, it's too big. And sometimes there may be a good reason people haven't written about subjects. Maybe there is, but because maybe it's just anecdotal. Maybe it's just one thing. I don't know. Maybe it's not interesting. Maybe it's not very, very good. Maybe it's just personal. That's why it needs to be bigger. You need to have this bigger way of thinking, I suppose. Talk about the relevance of your research in your field. That's my point. Okay, that's the point I made before. Again, it doesn't need to be totally new, and I stress this point. It doesn't need to be entirely new. It can be a new way of looking at an old problem. See, that's just it. No need to say I'm going to reinvent the wheel. Just say, look, in the past, I don't know. Let's change. Let's have another example. In the past, anthropologists have focused a lot on kinship. Kinship was a big thing in anthropology. This stops in the last I guess 30, 40 years. Am I right? Maybe I'm wrong for the dates. But maybe someone will come back to kinship with a different way of looking at it. these things come back sometimes with new sources, with new eyes, I guess, on what was written before. Remember that you're not here to have a Twitter fight with other historians, other sociologists, geographers, other people. You're there to have a conversation with them. You need a conversation. The conversation is based on reading each other's work. I mean it, you know. If I want to criticize someone's work, I need to read it first. That's as simple as that. And it's also about you being in conversation with someone else's work. So basically, how do you say one person wrote something about your subject? Okay, you cannot agree with this person, but not totally. You're going to say that. You know? I agree with the first conclusions of author X, but my research tends to show that this part of Professor X's conclusions are not correspond to the situation. Maybe it's just that, maybe it's too large, or maybe are just inaccurate. Remember, the thing is that it's not to prove someone wrong. It's not right or wrong. It's just sometimes it's just a problem of accuracy as well. It's just inaccurate. We're not here to say I'm right, and again, it's not being the best, the strongest, and this kind of stuff. It's about giving nuances, having a conversation with people. We all individuals from different parts of the world, if possible, if you subject is about that, with female and male professors or researchers as well, because it's important not just to always mention the same authors. Remember, it's kind of biased, always going back to the same names because they're famous. Just to go back to all this, to acknowledge basically the fact that people have worked on this before, okay? There's nothing worse than that. Let me give you a story which was in the news last week in the US, but to give you just a quick example. The New York Times published an investigation in 5 parts on Haiti. Okay, Haiti. Haiti is one of the poorest countries in the world today. Formerly colonized by the French, it was then invaded by the Americans. You know the story, being in the 20th century. Anyway, it was colonized by the French. You had the famous War of Independence against the French. The country became independent. The first black republic in the world, 1804. Okay, the French came back a few years later and imposed, blackmailed, to be entirely clear, and the government. If the government didn't reimburse the former slave owners, they would reinvade the island. So the government paid hefty ransom every year to the French government and to one French bank in particular. Okay, that's a story. That's a story which was written by many historians in Haiti, which people knew about, until quite recently. Apart from the last bit, apart from this one bank, that I mentioned this part of the last bank. The New York Times last Monday, not Monday this week, the Monday before, if I remember correctly, published that story. And many historians thought, hang on, no, it's not new. We knew that story. We knew the story at all. We didn't take the time to recognize the fact that the research had been done before by many historians, men and women from Haiti first, or from Haiti, black historians from Haiti, but also from historians from outside, from the whole planet, basically, working on this. I can't say how many there are. I wouldn't know, but quite a few. So you need to recognize that. You can't say it was forgotten. It was, no. We knew that. But still, what's new here is the part about the bank. And the bank happens to be the CIC, a French bank, the CIC one. And it's like, this part actually, people know that much about the bank, and that is really new research. And that's, don't get me wrong, it's very good research. It's amazing research. You can find it online. You type New York Times, Haiti, you will find it. But see here, there's the same problem, basically. That's exactly the same problem. It could be me, it could be anyone doing that. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to, point fingers at journalists, because the journalists, not my point here. But the fact is that some people thought they were the first ones to research. But actually, they interviewed people, they interviewed historians, interviewed geographers, interviewed specialists, just even to write their articles, and they didn't mention them. Whereas actually they were in conversation with them. And they had a new angle, because they had to look at the bank in question, the CIC. So that's an important story. Their work is important, and it's So say it's rubbish and everything. That's important. That's pretty much the same story. Your research proposal should do the same. All your research throughout your career should do the same. Actually, it's not just a research proposal. You should not. You're not the first one to write on something most of the time. Maybe your angle is new. Maybe the sources you found are new. Maybe that's true. But you never. No one ever writes in a vacuum. No one ever writes. There's no genius. There's no myth of anyone being above everyone else. It's true. Some people are very good writers. Some people are very good, professionals. But no one works on their own. That's the point. Okay, and I stress that. I will just repeat the last point. If you use a methodology, if it's new, if it's old, doesn't matter really. Okay, just say how it's going to benefit your research. Okay. If it's new, maybe it's the reason why it's new, because it's building on previous methodology. So okay, that's a good reason to use, but it's not. Don't say something new because for the sake of it being new. Basically, it's pointless. Otherwise you have a fashionable research project. That's all. Just do it because it's interesting for you, basically. Okay, it's interesting for you for your own research project. Okay, and that's I mean it because it's not. Don't feel like you're obliged to use all methodologies or new methodologies because someone told you to do so. Just check it applies to your research project. All right. The last point, which is important, it's about the feasibility of research, and I mean it. I left it for the last one because it's something which people tend to forget. Remember, the research statement is just about intellectual ideas, it's big things, big ideas, how you will contribute to scholarship, what will be your place in history among the stars and this kind of stuff. Remember, scholarship is very much about practicalities. Let me give you an example from England first, and after you understand. In the last few years, in many history departments in the UK, actually in many parts of the Western world, people have tried to decolonize the curriculum, tried to think about writing history in a different way. I'm talking about history here. You might have heard about that. Have you heard about that? Maybe. The point was that many of my students wanted to use, sources written by Nigerians, because I teach a course in Nigeria, themselves. Okay. To which point I told them, look, Abi, it's an amazing idea, but unless you know a stash of documents, or if you know how to speak a different language than English, how will you do it? See, it's not the intellectual intention is good, it's about going back to the authors of knowledge and to give back to people, but here, the practical element wasn't there. Remember, my students were in third year as well. How could they afford to travel to Nigeria? Please, you go to Nigeria and come back in 6 weeks. I'm expecting your first draft. I can't do that. So the research is just not feasible. It's not because I don't want them to do it. It's because they can't do it like that. Still, they can do it. They can go through all the colonial sources based in London. They are colonial sources, but they're based in London. Or they can go through newspapers from Nigeria, which are in London. But see, they are in London, so that's why the in London is important, because they just they just need to go to take the bike, the cycle, and this kind of stuff to go to the library, and they're lucky enough to have access to the library. And that's the practical element here. Library access, archive access. That's something which you need to think about. In general, where are your sources? Where are your interviewees? Are you planning to interview someone at the other side of the world? How will you budget for one plane ticket to Japan? As much as I'd like to go to Japan, I've never been. I can't justify it yet. I need to find a good reason. See, how will that work? How will that work? And I guess the question of feasibility of research, which is very important, because if you want to change who writes, in general scholarship, we also need to take into account these very practical elements, very practical elements. It's not just about big ideas, not just that. It's also about how we're going to do things. And if you need support from the host department you're applying for, well, this can be an application, that's, you're not asking for so many data, but you need to realize that you need to spend, say, 2 months in a different country, 3 weeks in that city to see, to interview people, to see archives, I don't know, to this kind of stuff. You need to think about it in advance, to show that you thought about the practical elements of the whole thing. any kind of research is based on this kind of on these premises. You cannot do research if you don't know where you're going to go, how you're going to do it, and who you're going to talk to. And I guess it's linked to another element which I don't have time to talk about right now, but also about the ethical dimension of it. You know, it's also very practical. Do people agree to do research with you in general? Do you have a protocol in place to record their consent? So that's, you know, tend to use a practical sorry, I forgot to add this bullet point, but I will add it. How will you include it? Have you thought about this in general? It's an important question. Why? Because actually, you know, people will think, you know, you can't travel to the middle of nowhere and ask questions to people who might get offended, who might not like it. You might not be able to record the interviews, you may not be able to record anything the same. You know, you'll be able to take into account what you're doing if you're following the whole ethical rules. I could talk about the whole ethical dimension for quite a while, and I will add this definitely to the slide before I put it online. But that's something which is very, very important. You cannot think about research if you don't have this in place. And that's a big point which I like to finish this talk on, but it's an essential one. Why? Because actually, for all these practical questions, that's one which is so essential, which is so important that you cannot you cannot avoid having a conversation at all in many Western institutions in general about this. Okay, you need to think about it. You need to think about it. Imagine, let's take an example here. We organized a small masterclass at IFRA in September last year for some students. We talked about sexual harassment on campus. We need to be sure before we talk about before we interview people that first they're willing to talk about this. Second, that they were aware that we were not going to publish anything at all, no names, nothing at all, and that the answers were not going to be used apart from in a statistical manner. So we had 10 people reported this. So no one could ever be identified. Okay, that was the point. See, without this kind of example, without this kind of protocol, I suppose no one could do any kind of formal research. But I tend to finish this kind of presentation on this to make sure that you understand that a research proposal will take this into account. Traveling, obviously, practical elements. Do you know where your sources, interviews are? But do you know if have you thought about the ethical dimensions of your work? And that's a very practical one, which you need to think about before, and which should appear in your research statement. Should I stop here? I could talk about it for quite a long time, as you can tell. Any questions you might have now?
My question is rather funny. How many times do you really have to?
How many times do I have to?
Get one.
How
many times?
66, I think, for me. 65 or 66 for me. For a job. For a PhD was I can't remember now. It should have been more than 20, at least maybe 30. Yeah.
I spoke to a friend lately and he said 65, 60 times. Are you serious?
It's true. The one thing, I was working on the side myself as a teacher because I didn't income, purely. I thought, but it's tiring. It's tiring, yes. The one thing which is quite clear is that no one, it's very rare, it's extremely rare when we get a job like that. Even the best ones always.
Thank you.
So my question is about the saying that no one has ever done this research before. What if indeed you're the first person? For example, when I was doing my MA, my master's, my research was on sexual violence in Pentecostal churches.
Okay.
And I checked everywhere. I saw resources, I saw books, I saw works from professors in the US who have done that, but in Nigeria it is very difficult because of the sensitivity of the subject. But what if indeed you're the first person doing that? How do you write that you haven't found any other author or any other person who has done research on this before?
It's interesting the way you formulated it. See, some people have done that in the US, but not here. Well, actually, you just said it. You said some people have done that in other countries. Yes. In Nigeria, you had a documentary on the BBC, so it wasn't. You remember the cold room in Lagos? What was it called?
Sex for Grace.
Thank you, Sex for Grace. Remember that documentary? You had that.
It wasn't in Pentecost. It's not in
Yeah, exactly.
setting.
That's
So
the
the
closest you can
video
find. And see what I'm doing? I'm going closer. US, Nigeria, but it's still not Nigeria. It's BBC coming here. And you got little by little, but in churches in particular, to the best of my knowledge, because I was a bit interested in the subject, and I'm not aware of anything of the sort. That's what you say. Look, people have worked on this in that way, and they developed this methodology. So you're aware of the methodology they use. Journalists have also worked on the topic in Nigeria, and this is how they've done it. And people, will see people work and is it the right way to do this kind of thing. May I ask you, since Naomi, what you're playing to at the moment, if you don't mind, you don't have to. If you want to share that with us, were you playing for PhDs, MAs, in US, in the UK? Where are you playing? Which countries? Canada? Okay.
So there's this school, I checked their website to apply in September, and I realized that they don't have a different, you don't write statement of purpose separately, and you don't write your proposal separately, so you have to write everything together. So how do you do that? How do you do that?
You remember at one point there was one thing which I said, it goes either in a cover letter or in a research proposal. That's your own research trajectory. Because some universities require you to mix everything together. So you tend to mix both, basically. You tend to mix both, You put at the start what will be the cover letter and then research proposal. You make the cover letter slightly smaller and you will just insist on your own research trajectory. Okay? I think that's the best way of doing it. So first cover letter, then trajectory, then try to trim down the cover letter and insist to really develop the research trajectory part. Okay? Yeah.
Many of us have seen a lot of issues, a lot of bottlenecks, facing and surmounting those kind of challenges, especially from your CV, the way you structure your CV, your statements, of interest or other things. By the time you want to apply for something and they put kind of question across to you, your head maybe want to scatter because don't you understand? What am I going to write? What kind of things that really interest the team in charge? Ability to do all those kind of, it's a lot that really gain this feeling. How I hope that we have many people that things getting this kind of opportunity. I want to appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. There I don't know, maybe just a request. I don't know if it's possible to have this slide to our email.
They will be added to. Yeah, you can do that. They will be on the website. That's easier. They will be on the website. Okay. With the video, we're gonna have a new post with the video, and underneath you also download the PowerPoint. Okay. Okay. That's easier, and everyone goes download this.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. All right. It's okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Good luck, everyone.
Good luck. Thank you, guys. Thank you.